Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. My name is Patrick, and welcome to another edition of Networking While Social Distancing. We're here with somebody within Maryland Higher Education, Carol Harrison. I'll turn it over to Carol to introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, what you do, and give us some fun facts about you personally and professionally.
Hi, I'm Carol Harrison. I'm currently the Executive Director of Student Success and Registrar at the College of Southern Maryland. I primarily work at the La Plata campus, but right now my office is Calvert County, it's been interesting times. I've been in higher ed for 31 years. I actually graduated from Frostburg State University, was really active in student life, was a residence assistant, was a tour guide in the admissions office, and when it was coming time to start finding a job, I had some mentors say, why don't you go into college admissions and give that a shot? So I started at, Shepherd College in Shepherdstown, West Virginia as an admissions and financial aid counselor. From there, I jumped to Hagerstown Community College in the admissions and registrar's office, and I was there for 5 years. And then in 1998, I moved to become the registrar at the College of Southern Maryland, and I've been there ever since for 22 years. I've continued to stay active at Frostburg State. I am on the alumni board there, have been still active with my sorority at Frostburg State. I also have been very active in Girl Scouts since about 1999 up until just a couple years ago when I decided to go back to school. And I'm currently working on getting my doctorate from Morgan State University in Community College Leadership. So that's taken up a ton of my time the last 3 years.
Sure.
And I also, another personal thing about me, I love to can. So I kind of got out of it when I went back to school, but this summer I'm definitely going to start canning again because, like many of us, we're probably kind of somewhat, hoarding canned food. So I'm feeling a little nervous that I don't have as much canned food as I normally do. So, and I have to say, to finish up the answer to the question, I loved my experience so much at Frostburg that I just naturally started in this profession and never left.
Right. Just tell us how your work life has changed over the last several weeks.
I think the biggest thing that I see, and I think this is also echoed by my staff, is you start to work, and I think we've started to create some bad habits where you're used to getting up and walking across campus to go to this meeting or that meeting, or maybe you occasionally go out to lunch, stop by, chat with your colleagues, with the people in your office. And I think for me, I don't feel I've ever worked harder than in the last 5 weeks. What registrars' offices do is pretty typical, and I feel like everything that we do has been completely, I feel like I was going like this, and now I'm going like that. And whenever there's a significant change that happens on campus, just as an example, we decided to remove our online fees for students. When they made that decision, guess who gets to remove all those fees? The registrar's office.
Right. Yeah.
When a big decision for us was allowing students to opt into a pass-fail option. Typically, they can only opt into that in a few classes, and they have to do that at the beginning of the semester. We're giving students up until about a week and a half after the semester ends to see if they want to do the pass-fail option, and all of it has to be manually entered by my office. So we're just trying to balance all these new initiatives that are so important. Our mantra has become maximum compassion, maximum flexibility, which we absolutely have. But on Friday, when the latest change came down, my staff went, "Uncle," and we're looking to other offices to help us, and just because a lot of what we have to do is manual. Oftentimes, I've always described a registrar's office as the backstage manager. If you're putting on a production, and our name will never be up in lights, but the show can't go on without us, and that's become so evident the last 5 weeks. So, and I think we also, because we don't see each other, I'm meeting more frequently with my direct reports. I mean, I never typically used to have a weekly staff meeting with all my people, but I do now, and I probably check in with my direct reports almost it's every day. It's sometimes a couple times a day, just because there are certain things we have to talk about which would normally come from having to stroll by their office and want to have a conversation. So, but I also think another thing I've seen that's been interesting is communication is even more important in this environment. Decisions can get made here, and they have to make sure that they trickle down here. We're all guilty of maybe sometimes not reading an email fully. And I've noticed that everyone's making this mistake where we're missing emails because there's just so much more email, or we're not reading them thoroughly. And so it's critical to make sure that you're not speed reading. You take time to make sure you understand what you just read, you comprehended it, and then if you have something you have to do from that, and to respond to people, the way that we communicate in an email is so much more important to say, yep, okay, I got what you need, I'll get this report to you by X date. It's just so important to do that now more than ever. So
yeah. Those are good feedback, and I really appreciate what you said about leadership in your teams. As a manager and as a campus leader, what do you do to help your team and the campus at large adjust to all these changes?
I think one of the key things I try to do is make sure that everybody's at the table or at the Zoom meeting that needs to be at that meeting, because so much of what we do is going to impact maybe one area a little bit and another area a great deal, and we just got to make sure everybody's at the table. And to me, it's more so we're making sure that we're implementing and what has already been decided. And we're definitely having input to some things, but there's some things that management just has to say, this is what we're going to do. And then you just have to make sure that you have everybody there that's going to make sure that we implement this new policy or this new decision effectively as quickly as possible. And also, I think another really important thing that I've seen is training happening on the fly. We're not just going to tell people, like, we surveyed our students and a lot of them had, varying issues. So we trained about 20 people. This is how you're going to make the call. Here's your script. Here are the parameters that you can work around. So we didn't just throw an initiative at staff. We took the time to train them. And I think that's also really important, because not everybody is able to go like this. You need to spend some time to make sure they understand what the objective is and what they need to help you get there. And also, I think, some of the decisions we've had to make has caused a lot more work for different areas. And I think you would have to acknowledge that with your staff. Like, I'm really sorry that we have to update 300 sections for summer, but we need to, because those are no longer going to be face-to-face. They're going to be online. And we need to make sure that students understand that when they're signing up for these classes. The interesting thing is that in 5 weeks, nobody's taken any time off. Like, not that we're really going to go anywhere, but I think that's another thing that we have to be careful about is, all of us, especially my assistant registrars, had vacation plans. There were some medical issues potentially, and everything just stopped, and all we've been doing is focusing on work. So I think as we get farther along on this, that Friday, when you get to Friday, I've never been more happy for it to be Friday, understanding that staff need to, on Friday, they need to leave, and they're going to pick back up when they get there on Monday. But we need to give them some time to just, relax. And just recognizing that we have to take time to take care of our family because, just eventually something's going to
Right.
happen. A lot of us have elderly parents, kids get sick, and we need to take care of ourselves too. And I think many of us are forgetting to do that. And as a leader, I think you need to say that's okay because that's what you would normally do if you were
Right.
at work. And because you're right there, and it's everything that you do is right there in your office, in your house. It's so much harder to disconnect from work, and that's really
Mm.
important to do.
But I'm curious, like, what are you doing personally to keep yourself healthy and sane?
So I think it's really important to get out and walk. I'm very inspired by you. You're running, Pat. I'm not there yet. I really, I think I've developed some better habits. Where I'm taking time to walk. Every day. Also, I also have become. I was religious at one time. I kind of got out of it, and I know I needed something to go to help and just say, could you please help others? So I do daily prayer meditation, which is something I have not done in years.
Hmm.
Uh, I love to cook. So one of the nice things about being at home is, when I'm done for the day, I walk 2 feet into the kitchen. So I am tearing it up in in the kitchen, and and we're trying to. I would say, are we eating healthier? Probably. But I think just the quality of time that you've been able to spend with your family has greatly increased. I've actually, on Friday nights, I have a running date with about 8 of my best friends from high school. And for the past month, we've been on a Zoom conference for anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, just reminiscing and
That's
hanging
cool.
out. And it's, and if you think about it, it's like if you were at a restaurant or a bar and you're sitting back, drinking and just, having a good time with your friends. So, you can still interact with people, you just aren't physically going to be close to them. And also just reaching out, checking in on your parents, I think is important. And the other thing is you've got to make sure you get enough sleep.
Mm.
That is super, super important.
I
And,
agree with you that if you don't take care of yourself, then you're not going to be any good.
also we've put together some puzzles, playing games. I mean, just stuff that we haven't done in a really long time. And I think those are the kind of enjoyment we've been getting out of this too. It's other colleagues that are registrars, so we spend the first 10 to 15 minutes just talking about some of the issues that all of us have in common. The other interesting thing is we're spread out. There are people on the East Coast, people in the middle of the country, and people on the West Coast. So just finding out what's happening and how things are going in those different locations, I think is if you can find that group, that's been really healthy because it's not just a weekend thing. It's that social interaction you would get during the week too. You can't just limit it to once a week. It needs to be more than that.
Let's go back to professionally. Something that strikes me is just you know your longevity in the profession. You've been at College of Southern Maryland for over 20 years and worked at a number of other institutions. So, what advice do you give to higher ed professionals? Those that are at the start of their career or mid-career and want to continue working in higher ed and grow into a leadership position. Any thoughts you would share with them?
Yeah, so I think it's important if you can, even if your school doesn't have a structured mentoring program, is to find a mentor. And this has happened naturally to me over the years in different places that I've worked. That people kind of take me under their wing and show me the ropes because that doesn't necessarily have to be your supervisor because they're going to be busy doing other things, but someone that just kind of teaches you the ins and outs of that institution, the culture of the place, because there's so many intricacies to where we work, and your supervisor can't possibly teach you all of that, and that's the person that you can go to and vent to, and just that special colleague. I think that's been, and I don't just have that at CSM or the other places that I've worked. I've been really lucky. Another piece of advice would be get involved professionally with an association, whether that's regionally within your state or nationally. And through those interactions, I've not only do I have colleagues that I can go to, but they have become lifelong friends that I've vacationed with, that my children know really well. And I think it's so important to have those kinds of connections, because what we do is I mean, although our institutions are somewhat unique, you can apply what somebody did at UMBC or University of Michigan just as easily at your institution. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. And if you come back with a fantastic idea, they're going to think you're brilliant, but you're just copied a really good idea from a colleague. And I do think professional development is really important for most starting professionals. That means that you're going to stuff probably within your state. And hopefully that you work for someone who supports, that you get out of the office, a few times a year. That's something actually that I make everybody that works for me go to something outside of the college once a year. And I do have a couple of people that I work with that have become pretty actively involved in their associations, and it's exciting to see them grow, and what they give back to the institution triple. I also think that if you can find time to get an advanced degree, I think that's so valuable. I went back to school after my kids were grown. I don't know how, Patrick, how you did it with your 3 girls. I applaud people that are in my program that have younger children, but once you kind of decide, I think I can see myself staying in this profession for a while. My degree at Frostburg was in history.
Right.
It helped me be a good writer and a good researcher. But my master's degree and hopefully eventually when I earn my doctorate, definitely reflect what was important to me at the time and developed me professionally. And I never stop learning, I think is important, because what we do is going to continue to change dramatically. And if you can't see that what happened over the last 5 weeks.
Sure. That's a good point.
But I think that's so. And the other thing is, I think it's important, again, we talked about taking care of ourselves during this pandemic, but you also have to make sure that you take time away from the office. You have to plan and go out and have fun and walk away from the institution, because we're not doing brain surgery. So if we're gone and off the grid for a week or two, it's going to be okay. And that's really, self-care is I think really important too.
Going back to your history lens and lifelong learning, one of the things that I think is clear to a lot of us is that even when things return to normal, things might not be ever quite the same again. So what do you think are some things that might change, particularly in higher education, after this pandemic, or things that have changed that are going to stay changed?
I think what's going to be really interesting is what's going to happen with fall enrollment. I think people are going to stop and think about, do I want to pay the money for online instruction when if they're a freshman or sophomore, they could do at our institution. So I think we're going to see a tremendous enrollment boost. I don't know if it's going to, I think we're going to see our head count go up. I think our FTEs may remain, kind of flat or maybe see a little, but I think people are going to say, you know what, I don't want you to stop your education. Take 1 or 2 courses at your community college online for the next year until this pandemic flattens, because I think people are going to be really concerned about living in dormitories. A lot of people economically are impacted by this pandemic. I don't know anybody that doesn't have at least one family member that has been furloughed. I think people are going to be much more money conscious, and I think that we're going to adapt to, especially community colleges are poised to change much easier than a 4-year school. And I think we're going to figure out how to take care of the students who are on the fence of whether I want to go away or not, and that people will start to see the incredible opportunities and the value of going to a community colleges versus a four-year school. I also think that we're going to design programs that are accelerated more so than we are now, and that will better prepare us when we see enrollment dips starting around 2025. I think we're going to be better prepared to weather that oncoming storm. Because the other thing that I've learned is that this pandemic showed an ever decreasing, widening gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Mm.
And I'm really concerned for students who don't have, the ability to go online, that had to come into our institutions and get a laptop, that had to figure out how to get better internet connection. And we need, and I think as a country, we need to do a better job of figuring out how we're going to help people who have their income and their living situation is at or below the poverty level. And also, I think maybe we'll see some different value placed on different professions, and hopefully we'll start paying people a little bit better in obvious professions that are essential to allowing us to live and meet our basic needs. So.
Yeah, that's some great feedback. I appreciate your comment about essential employees. I think we've all really need to reevaluate what essential means to us as a society, and are we valuing and compensating people who are in those functions appropriately? I mean, all of us that work in community colleges are used to having this equity lens. I mean, it's what part of our mission, right? But here we are in 2020, and we're learning that, our students don't have access to laptops, high-speed internet, a place to study, and so I think even for those of us that work with these students day in and day out, we're realizing that, there's still a lot of issues that we need to tackle, both as educators and as a society. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have a few friends that are teachers, and they are very limited in some of the things that they can do because you may have like I think about, I mean, you have 3 kids, I have 3 kids, and had my kids been at an age where all of them needed to have access to the internet and to a computer, I mean, there was at that time when they were growing up, I mean, we had 1 computer. We didn't have the ability to have them be in school all day long. I mean, families that make decent livings, I mean, I wouldn't have thought to have all 3 of my kids have a tablet or a laptop. I know that's a little bit different now, and I think we have to look to K through 12 and help them, because if the equity gap, it's even more apparent there, because although we can go completely online, they are limited as to what they can do. I mean, I would like to see community colleges embrace making the personal protective equipment that's needed. My daughter's a nurse, and I remember she was down this weekend, and I said, I was like, how do you take care of your hands? I'm like, my hands are so dry from washing them all the time. And she goes, honestly, Mom, she goes, we're not really having that issue right now because we're completely out of hand sanitizer. So we're probably not washing our hands as much as we used to because we just don't have the gel there anymore. And as a country, and I think community colleges are poised to do that, we got to figure out a way to manufacture that.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of learned lessons or had become more aware of supply chain logistics than what we ever had been. It's just so easy to think about, I order something from Amazon and it shows up at my door, but you're absolutely right. There's a lot of things that we need to work through and solve. So your daughter and all those who are risking their lives for others have the personal protective equipment that they need. So, thank you for sharing that. Let me shift gears a little bit. I like to keep things a little light. So I've been asking everyone I've talked to one particular fun question, and that question is, if you could have any superpower at work, what superpower would you have and why?
You know what? I keep going back. Like, you think about strength and invisibility and read minds and all that kind of stuff. To me, I go back to just empathy. I mean, I just think it's so important to be able to really. I guess my superpower would, I want to be like the best communicator and empathizer that could ever be, because, and I've seen some of the leadership of my college do a really good job of this, that, instead of writing me a long email that could be back and forth for, all day, they just pick up the phone and we just have a 5-minute conversation. It takes care of that. And I think what's also really sweet is, like, our president of our college has reached out to me a couple of times to check in on me and how my husband's doing. And Dr. Murphy, I can't even imagine being her shoes. So the fact that she's taking time to just ask how I'm doing and how my family's doing, is so, that's just, it really, it meant the world to me. So I think that's what I want my superpower to be.
I like it. I'm a Star Trek fan. I like The Next Generation. So this reminds me of Deanna Troi from Star Trek, who's an empath. But I think what you said is very touching. I think, it's important for us to remember and embrace our humanity in all this. And, if we see each other and empathize with one another, that makes communicating and working with people so much better. So I think that's a really great answer. And thank you for it being so thoughtful. We're at kind of the end of our time. So I just wanted to check to see, do you have anything you want to share with us? Anything you want to say or add to the conversation, or if there's anything you're reading or you want us to link to, I'm happy to do so.
I think I remember the quote, what is it? These are the best of times, these are the worst of times. And I think, although this has been really, really hard, I've also seen the best come out of my institution. I'm really proud of what we've done. We always have the students first, and what's going to help make them get through the semester, and then how we're going to reopen and be safe. And I was watching 60 Minutes last night, and like Ford and GM were able to switch gears and start making ventilators. Like within a month, they were coming off the line. And I think, we'll find a better way to make sure that we're prepared for, an epidemic. And just, I get choked up, at 7:00 when I see people cheering for, when it's a shift change at the hospital. So I really try to, although I'm staying educated about COVID, I'm really trying to find the really good stories that are out there, where people are making a difference and being innovative to help people. I'd like to walk out of this to know that I did everything I could to help students, but I also gave a little bit of myself to help my community too, and I think that's important.
Yeah, that's great thoughts.
But what I hope we're doing a year from now is reflecting on all the good that came out of this, instead of, wallowing in, the hard parts of this. So that's what I hope we're able to do a year from now.
I agree. And I think that's a good note to kind of wrap this up. I appreciate your thoughts, and I think there's a lot to learn, and we have a lot of reflecting to do, both in our industry and as a nation. So thank you for spending a little bit of time with me this afternoon to share your thoughts.
Sure.